Hey YouTube, welcome back. Today we start a new series. We have a series called System Design Fundamentals. In this series, we talk about the fundamentals of the systems and what are the most popular components that being used when we do talk about distributed systems and big real world systems. Today, our first video. Today we will talk about let me take this quite small. Today we'll talk about single server setup or single system setup. And it's important to start from this place. Of course, there is no big system use only a single server, but as a start for any project or for any system, you start with a small thing and you just try to make it complex on the go. So like a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and building a complex system is no different. So to start with something simple, every single server setup to start with something simple, everything is running on a single server, and we would try to see how we can build a system that only rely on single server. So everything in systems starts with something called a user. Okay, let me make sure that also it's right. And this user, yeah, can I make it like 18? Yeah, 14 is good. 14 is good. Everything starts with a user. Okay, and yeah, and this user could be, for example, a web browser, web browser, or a mobile app. And this user is trying to connect with our server. So let's just have server here. Okay. So the user here wanna connect with the server. So the user try to send a request or try to connect with a server. But how could the user or the client connect to the server? The client could connect to the server by the server IP address. There is something called IP address. So let's just put the IP address here, and let's talk about what is an IP address. Oh, okay. So the IP address, or an IP address, which stands for Internet Protocol Address, is like a unique identification number for devices on a computer network, including the vast global network known as the Internet. It's a way for computers and other devices to find and communicate with each other. Imagine it is like a phone number for the internet. So if I want to connect with one of my friends, I call him on his phone number or her on his phone number. But and the browsers or the servers are the same. When you want to connect with each other, they connect with the IP address. And when they try to send an IP address, we the IP address is when the IP address. Let's give an example of the IP address. So also you know how the IP address. Oh, this is big. The IP address it will be like 15.125.23.214. So this is like an example of an IP address. So once the IP address is obtained, a hyper transfer protocol, which called HTTP requests, are sent directly to web browser. Okay, once the web browser receive this request with the IP address. So let's just talk about again what is the HTTP because it's important. So the HTTP, it's a hypertext transfer protocol. It's the foundation of data communication on the World Wide Web. It's a set of rules and convention that govern how data should be sent, received, and displayed between a web server and web browser. Think of it like as a language that web browsers and servers use to talk to each other. And sometimes some people say like, this is sound the same as an IP address because the IP address also is responsible for communication because we can. I said that think about the IP address is something like like a phone number, and the HTTP also is the same. So like the HTTP, which stands for the hypertext transfer, is a protocol that enables communication between a web client, okay, and a web server. So this is a web client and this is a web server. The IP address plays a crucial role in the HTTP communication. So it's identifying the server's DNS resolutions. So like it's the like the HTTP in it, we have the IP address that play the crucial role when it comes to communication. So when the server get the request, it will send back a response. For example, it will send a response back to the server, which will be like, for example, HTTP page, HTML page, for example. But our system looks quite weird because we require the web browser or the user to connect to the server with the IP address. And I guess when we go to the internet, we don't put IP addresses. We put something called domain name like facebook.com, gmail.com, google.com, chrome.com, and etc. So how can we solve this problem and not force the user to memorize or remember the IP address? We use something called a DNS. So what is a DNS? A DNS is it's a domain name system. Let me have a square here, and let's make it white, and let's call DNS. And I want it to be bold. Okay. So let's just see. Okay. So what happens here? In the DNS, it's a domain name system. It's like a giant address book for the internet. Imagine you want to visit a website like www.facebook.com. Instead of having to remember the website's complicated number address, which is IP address, the DNS help you to find using the simple name. So basically, you send to the DNS the domain name of the specific server that you want. And the DNS sends back to you. Let me try to make this. Can I just make this one like... okay, let's leave it like that. And the DNS sends back to you the IP address of the server. And you don't have to remember the... yeah, I guess this will look better. And you don't have to remember the address anymore. Okay. Okay, this sounds better. Looks better. So I guess our server looks not bad after all. So let's examine the traffic source. The traffic of our web servers come from two sources: web applications or web application or web browsers, and mobile applications. The web applications uses a combination of server-side languages like Java, Python, to handle business logic, storage, and client-side languages like HTML and JavaScript. We have the mobile application, which is HTTP. HTTP protocol is a communication protocol between the mobile app and the web server. JavaScript object notation, which is short for JSON. JSON, which is short for JavaScript object notation, is commonly used as an API response format to transfer data due to its simplicity. An example of the API, let's just see an example for this one because it's important to know how it will look like. So an example for the API, where you have like a GET request and and for example you just have like a user, and maybe you have the ID of the user number ID 12, and you want to retrieve user with the ID number 12, and you receive some sort of object, and this object is like having maybe some properties like the ID, which is 12, have the name, first name, which first name, for example, which is John, and maybe like age, name, etc. But let's just take this as example. So yeah, that's it for today's video. And today we talked about how the single server setup looks like, and how it will how we could have a single server setup. And I guess there is something missing here. Like, we have a user, but from where could we get this user? So the next video we'll talk about how we can get this user, how we can have a database, and how we can scale this database. So that's it for this video, and I hope my description was good. If you like my content, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you will never miss a video, and see you in future problems.